I started working on the second SkyHunter today, and the first thing I want to do is figure out my landing gear. I decided against using this piece of wood for the landing gear mount, and I'm going to try to use this carbon fiber rod. So I was looking at it. There's a little channel right here, concave. It's convex on the other side that makes these two halves glue together. I think I'm going to try to use that channel for this rod, make it bigger. And I'm going to try to embed the rod right there in the fuselage, half in one side and half in the other. So that's my plan. So towards that plan, the first thing I have to do for the front nose wheel is drill a hole in the carbon fiber rod. So I've found me a drill bit that fairly closely matches the diameter of the front nose wheel, and I'm going to see if I can get that to work, although that drill does not go in this top part. Don't think that goes down completely over this part of the nose wheel. There's a flat place right there. Actually it does. So this might not be exactly the drill bit I want. I'll work that out again here in a second. But I plan to drill a hole in the center of this carbon fiber rod here to mount the nose wheel, and then on the back I'm going to capture it with two plates that pull together, I think. We'll see. I'm afraid this is going to be really hard to see, but there the carbon fiber rod is in the drill press, and hopefully we've got a hole through it now, looks like. Now, let's see how that meshes with the landing gear. Yeah, there that is. The hole is just a little bit smaller than the diameter of this landing gear, which is what I wanted. Does go through, but it's too tight to be a steerable nose gear. So either gonna have to file out this hole just a hair. It ain't gonna be much at all, which I really don't want to do. I'm afraid it's going to wallow out when it lands and stuff. Wow, it's pretty strong. I don't have much experience with carbon fiber strength. So I can make this hole just a little bit larger with a file. Actually, it seems to be just that is making it loosen up enough. And there's the control arm added to the top in case it can be steerable. Right now I think there's just too much. Well, actually a good strong servo might be able to turn that, but got to have that hole as tight as possible for the landing gear to work at all. Don't know what else to do there. Like I say, this is all just me trying to figure this out. So that would go in this channel. That, again, has to be enlarged. And I can already see that the control horn really doesn't come above the styrofoam there too much. So, but yeah, we do what we can. But I still think embedding that carbon fiber rod in both fuselage halves there may be what I need. I'm going to go with that. We're going to see how it works out. Now I need to mark this so I can enlarge that channel. So I just marked around the front and this collar and the top. The back will be fine just based on where that normal slot goes. But there's where I need to kind of do something special from the front, for the front. Now then, with that in there, and my plan to be to have something pinching the back gear in. I don't know that I don't need behind this, someplace right in here, another piece of wood that's holding this. I don't know if putting that in that foam is going to be sufficient. So I'll work on that. So I got to looking today. This is where I marked the other one for the front of that rod and the channel that's here. And you can see here's also a channel. And yesterday I said that this side would be, this would stick out. It isn't. Now this does stick out for the channel in this side, in the back, in the front, top, everything. Except for this in the fuselage. This side and this side are both have a channel in it. So there's something kind of there already to accept this rod. What I need to do is extend that channel. Or I could cut off this rod. I think I'm going to cut off the rod, to tell you the God's awful truth. So now my rod is cut to the same length as that pre-made channel in the bottom of the fuselage. I didn't know it was a channel in both sides till I looked at it really close. So now I have to make the channel just a little bit bigger. It's not quite the correct diameter, and I just need to kind of get half of this rod down in here. So I looked around from a hot knife. I'm going to use this one. And I looked around for blades or whatever with a round tip on it. This one's a little bit rounded, kind of on one side. And I looked through the ones that came with the hot knife and thought that maybe one of these flat ones might be what I need to use. But then when I started to put that in the hot knife, I looked at the tip of it and went, boy, just using that tip as it is may be my best bet, just to, because of the size it is and the shape it is, just to kind of put in there and run down through there one time and see what that, if that just will open up that channel as it already is in there a little bit. We're going to see here. I got the channel enlarged such that I can capture that carbon fiber rod inside the fuselage. I'm just using that hot knife. So there it is inside. And there's what I had to do to the channel. It's double the size in both sides. But I just ran that hot knife through it. It took 4 times, and cutting off the rod rather than trying to customize this foam just worked better. Just gently taking the hot knife through the channel each time of the 4. You could just see it widening a little bit top to bottom and deepening. So now I've got to re-drill my holes in the rod. I think I'm planning, let me show you what's going on here with the landing gear. So this is the original landing gear that came with the nose wheel that I have. And it came with these pieces of wood that match these 2 holes in the top. And this piece of wood really doesn't fit to be used on the bottom. A little bit of a gap there. Maybe you could force it. So this went on the bottom of the airplane, and then this would go inside, and they actually sent 2 of those pieces of plywood. So that's somewhat the system I was going to use. Now this was the original landing gear. Like I say, these parts and the control horn all came as part of a kit. While I was out at the hobby shop recently, I saw this landing gear for $10 or so, Dubro, and it was shorter in from here to the axle. You can see it's shorter than the other one and wider. So I said, that'll be great, because with this little extra height, doesn't look like much there, does it? On each side. Don't have those lined up exactly right. Let me get that in the center. There, that's more lined up on each side. Just that little extra sticking down had me nose down. And you can see if I put it on the table, the wheels still aren't touching on the white set while the metal's touching on the bottom set. So there's still a lot of height difference in these two. So I decided to go with this one because when I had this one on the test setup, which I was using that piece of wood for, I had a nose down attitude just sitting there, and that's not really that workable. Now, when you got a nose down and you're going down a runway, you actually do have air hitting it here and forcing it down. You don't really have your leading edge of your wing up into the wind, so you can start getting the Bernoulli effect working over the top of the wing if the wing's down like this. And trying to rotate an airplane like that through that problem is difficult. And what I've read online is an airplane that's like that, once you do get it rotated to here, the thing just really kind of tries to jerk up off the runway and causes a lot of problems. So I went with this little shorter, rear gear so that I have more of a level attitude with the plane. So capturing this gear with these pieces of plywood or other plywood, I've got plywood around here, I can make anything I want to like this. I'll probably remake these, but I will have to drill different holes in this, or maybe I'll remake the plywood to fit these holes. But also I'm going to put 2 holes in the center so that this rod will be in the center of the gear like that you've seen inside the fuselage. This will be on the bottom of the fuselage in the foam, and then a plate like this will be on the inside, bolted and glued down like that. 2 bolts right here through the carbon fiber rod, and then 2 bolts out on the ends to hold the whole thing down, and then of course, like I say, glue it in addition. That's my plan. Now for the front gear, you saw on the rod at one point here before I cut that, and the hole that I used to put this through was also cut off when I shortened this rod just about 3/4 of an inch. Just a very small bit that I shortened the rod. So I'm also thinking about wherever this nose wheel is up here, to come back behind that in this area. The nose wheel is up here. Come back behind that in this area, right behind it, and do another 2 pieces of plywood like this through that carbon fiber rod like I say, right behind where the this is coming through the front nose wheel is coming through the carbon fiber rod. That thickness is going to be a problem. Just to give it some extra strength and extra attachment to the fuselage. That's sort of what I'm looking for right there. So this gear may need to be fixed. I may not be able to use the front wheel steering, nose wheel steering. So that's what I'm looking at. 2 pieces of plywood in the front like this, capturing it on the inside. And then 2 pieces back here. That's the normal way. The well, I guess it'll be 1 piece of plywood on the inside of the fuselage back here, and the landing gear itself. Landing gear itself. There like that. That's what I'm going to attempt. The other problem here, center of gravity. If this gear is mounted too far back, whoops, speaking of back, let me move back just a little bit. If this gear is mounted on the fuselage too far back from the center of gravity, too far behind the center of gravity, then when the airplane tries to rotate, there's going to be a lot of leverage between the center of the gear and the center of gravity to add resistance. So I'm going to try to keep that as small as possible. Can't find anything on the internet about how close the rear landing gear on tricycle gear should be to the center of gravity. So I'm just going to kind of work with what I've got here as far as how far this channel extends behind the center of gravity. This is the wing slot right here. Center of gravity's someplace right in here, and that ain't gonna give me a lot to put the rear landing gear behind the center of gravity. So I'm just gonna live with that and see how it works out. You know, if you get it too far forward, then the plane won't even, it'll sit there with the tail on the ground and the nose wheel up in the air if the gear's too far forward. So right on the center of gravity would make it really light in the nose. I think just a little bit behind it is going to be optimal. I don't know. I'm not an aerospace engineer. I can't tell you. I looked around on the internet. They talk about tail draggers putting the gear exactly below the leading edge of the front wing in front of the center of gravity. Makes it fly better when usually those are fixed gear. I didn't see many retractable tail wheels, but there wasn't a lot of information. So that's what we're going to try. One last thing. Another reason I want to use like 2 pieces of plywood, and I found a piece of 1/4 inch plywood over there. I'm going to start making these parts. Another reason I want to use 2 pieces of plywood like this right behind the nose wheel to kind of pinch that carbon fiber rod is because that'll also give me a place to mount the nose steering servo in that wood if I do go with a steerable nose wheel. Don't think I'm going to be able to go with a steerable nose wheel because I don't think I'm going to have enough height on this. But I don't think it'll make much difference one way or another. Lots of airplanes don't have steerable nose wheels. The top piece of plywood is the battery tray that comes with the SkyHunter. So what I've decided to do this is my little piece of plywood that's going to try the landing gear. Oops, this landing gear will be on the bottom with screws through it. Now I messed everything up. Okay, so it's out of position. So I will go ahead and put the battery tray plywood on top of the pieces of plywood I make, because that'll give me a little gap in here for the battery straps to slide around fore and aft. Plus I can glue this plywood to the battery tray plywood, in addition to the 4 screws that'll be going through it in the back, and 4 screws that'll be going through it in the front, 2 screws in the outboard sides of both pieces of plywood, and of course on the front. Don't have a piece of plywood that size with me. Oops. But there will have to be a piece of plywood underneath in the front to kind of pinch the foam where the back, this will act as that piece. With the screws all the way through all 3 pieces of plywood and everything glued and screwed at the same time, and then 2 screws down the center line through the carbon fiber there, and 2 screws down the center line back here through the carbon fiber and the landing gear, and then the 2 outboard screws. And then again, it all glued together in this area and this area too, leaving this area free inside here to slide battery straps back and forth. I'll have screws sticking out here that'll interfere with the battery, and screws sticking out here that'll interfere with the battery, and perhaps even a nose wheel, something interfering with the battery. But there's things that can be done about that. We'll talk about that later when we see what kind of interference we do have. I made a tentative mark on the fuselage for center of gravity. I measured back from this point. It's 1/3 of the distance, basically, from this point to this point. It's what I'm told on the data sheet. So I've got that marked. But boy, that doesn't give me much behind the center of gravity. The carbon fiber rod stops here, but the battery tray goes back a little further. So I think what I'm going to be able to do is something like that, and get 2 screws through the carbon fiber spar in this area towards the center of this part of the landing gear. But that'll make my landing gear, the center of these axles will be about 1 inch. 1 inch behind, like I say, my tentative center of gravity there. It's not much. I just don't have much there, because the fuselage starts to slope up. All right, that's it for this build video. Thank you guys for all your help in advance. We'll keep slaving away at this and get it done eventually. Thank you.